Well, friends, one of Donald Trump's close advisors who tried to help him overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, Peter Navarro, is headed to prison. It's a start. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, do you remember this guy? Peter Navarro, one of Donald Trump's henchmen, one of his little assistants in trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election. This is the guy who gave the coup a catchy name, the Green Bay Sweep. Because, if you give a coup a catchy name, no one will be the wiser. Well, now Peter Navarro is headed to prison. So let's start by taking a quick look back to recall exactly what Peter Navarro did when he tried to run roughshod over the expressed will of the American voters back in 2020. So friends, let's start with this Rolling Stone article from back in 2021. Headline: Trump advisor worried he's not getting enough credit for trying to ruin American democracy. Former Trump advisor Peter Navarro details the Green Bay Sweep he organized with over 100 congressmen to keep Trump in office. And that article begins, for most patriotic Americans, January 6th represents a day of national shame and terror at what could have been the end of our democracy. But when former Trump economic advisor Peter Navarro reflects on that day, what he dwells on is that he doesn't get nearly enough credit. Navarro recently published a memoir and is now pushing out interviews to reporters bragging of a scheme he dreamed up with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon to overturn the results of the 2020 election. They even had a cringy name for it, the Green Bay Sweep. The plot sought to keep Trump in office by exerting maximum pressure on Vice President Mike Pence to block the certification of the Electoral College votes from pivotal swing states by drawing out the proceeding on national television for as long as 24 hours. It was the perfect plan, Navarro told the Daily Beast. We had over 100 congressmen committed to it. Friends, it really wasn't so much the perfect plan as it was a criminal conspiracy to obstruct the congressional proceeding. So what happened? Well, Congress subpoenaed Peter Navarro. The January 6th House Select Committee issued lawful congressional subpoenas to Peter Navarro for testimony and for documents. And rather than comply with those subpoenas, Peter Navarro blew them off. He defied them in his zeal to hide from Congress, and by extension from we the people, the damaging and incriminating information he could otherwise provide about Donald Trump. He blew off those subpoenas. So, not surprisingly, he was charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress for criminally violating lawfully issued congressional subpoenas. Navarro went to trial. Navarro was convicted, and Navarro was sentenced to 4 months in prison. But recently at his sentencing hearing, Navarro said, wait, don't put me in prison. I want to stay out of prison pending appeal, which could take a very long time. And the judge said, well, have your attorney put a motion in writing making your best arguments about why you shouldn't report to prison to start your 4-month sentence. And his attorney did that. Here is what happened when the judge got a hold of that motion filed by Peter Navarro's attorney asking that he be allowed to remain on release, go home, stay out of prison pending his appeal in the case. From the Washington Post, Peter Navarro ordered to begin serving prison term for January 6th contempt. And that article begins, a federal judge on Thursday ordered former Trump White House aide Peter Navarro to begin serving a 4-month prison term for ignoring a subpoena from the House committee investigating the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack, rejecting his request to stay free while he appeals his conviction on 2 counts of criminal contempt of Congress. Navarro said he worked on a plan to delay and ultimately challenge the outcome of Congress's formal count of the 2020 presidential election results with Steve Bannon, Trump's former political advisor. Both men refused to provide either testimony or documents as demanded by the House January 6th panel and were convicted of 2 counts of misdemeanor contempt and sentenced to 4 months of incarceration. Either man could become the first person incarcerated for defying a congressional subpoena in more than half a century under a rarely prosecuted offense punishable by up to 1 year in prison. Navarro, who claimed credit for devising a plan to overturn the 2020 election and keep Donald Trump in office, has one more chance to avoid being put behind bars if he can convince a federal appeals court that his legal challenges are likely to succeed, a premise that his trial judge rejected. Now, friends, one thing I'm pretty confident of, now that the trial court judge rejected Navarro's request to stay on release, to stay out pending appeal, the appellate court will not intervene and override that. So I think the next thing you're going to see happen in the Navarro case is the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the BOP, will give Navarro a reporting date, designate the federal facility that Navarro is to report to begin serving his 4-month sentence. But, there's an interesting disparity in what's happened to Navarro versus what happened to Bannon, because Bannon committed virtually the same crimes. Contempt of Congress by thumbing his nose at lawfully issued congressional subpoenas because Bannon did not want to reveal the incriminating evidence he had against Donald Trump. And Bannon went to trial, was convicted, and was sentenced to 4 months. But Bannon is out, pending appeal. He hasn't had to spend 1 minute behind bars yet. So why is there this disparity in the way the 2 convicted defendants are being treated? Well, the judge who presided over Peter Navarro's case is a judge named Amit Mehta. He is a straight-up, fair, impartial, no-nonsense judge. In fact, he is a former public defender in the courts of the District of Columbia. And he did what I consider to be the right thing. He imposed a sentence on Peter Navarro and ordered him into custody. Steve Bannon committed the same crimes, was convicted of the same offenses, was handed the same sentence, 4 months in prison. But the judge who presided over Steve Bannon's trial is a guy named Carl Nichols. Guess who he was appointed by? He's a Trump appointee. And I think it represents a real miscarriage of justice that Steve Bannon has been permitted to be out and about, continuing to try to do what he can to undermine our democracy and Americans' confidence in our voting systems, right? You can see him on his podcast. But that Trump-appointed judge decided, even though he's been convicted and sentenced, I'm just going to let him stay out, go home, pending the appeal of his conviction, which can take quite some time. So let's hope that this Navarro development represents 2 things. One, it represents the first in a long line of Donald Trump's criminal associates, his co-conspirators in the corrupt scheme to unlawfully retain the power of the presidency. You know, one of the first ruling class criminals, Peter Navarro, who will be spending time in federal prison for the crimes he committed against the laws of the United States. Let's hope this is the first in a long line of those folks being held accountable for their crimes. And let's also hope that this is only Peter Navarro's first criminal conviction. Let's hope that before too long, he is indicted for a conspiracy to commit offenses against or defraud the United States, for a conspiracy to interfere with a congressional proceeding, the certification of Joe Biden's election win. Many others have been indicted, tried, convicted, and imprisoned for that crime. The same crime Peter Navarro committed, just in another way. You know, he gave it a cute name, the Green Bay Sweep. No, it was criminally interfering with an official congressional proceeding. So let's hope this also represents just the first of Peter Navarro's convictions. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.